First, people are spending more and more time outside as the weather, of course, continues to get warm. But if you're working in the garden or even walking in the park, there's something to be mindful of. We're talking about ticks. One bite can lead to Lyme disease, an illness that is hard to diagnose as well as being harder to cure. Joining us now is Daniel Scavino Jr., someone who's raising awareness through a campaign called the Lyme Disease Challenge, and Dr. Leo Gallen, an internist here in New York City who's written extensively on Lyme disease. Your story, Dan, got the attention of our GM, Lou Leone, whom you know, and is also dealing with a similar circumstance that you're going through now. Why don't you tell us about your connection to Lyme disease?
Well, my wife's had Lyme disease for the past 10 years that we've known of. Prior to that, she was 3 or 4 years undiagnosed, where we were not aware of it. So all in, really 14 years of Lyme disease. And that's my connection, is she's been dealing with a lot of chronic pains over the years. Lyme disease is a brutal disease and affects hundreds of thousands of people, and it's just growing. And she got it, we think, in the garden of all places. The garden of your home? The garden of our home. She was gardening, and we believe that's where she was bit and received the tick bite, which transmitted what ultimately is known today as Lyme disease.
Dan, do you remember any symptoms immediately right away? I know Dr. Gallen will talk to that in just a moment, but do you remember, like, within the days or a window right after when something didn't seem right? Yeah,
it was a couple of weeks, actually, it took. We did not see a bullseye, and we did not even think of Lyme disease. Nobody thinks of it being Lyme disease or identifies it as Lyme disease. So we just kind of thought she was not feeling well. She had the flu. She was tired. She had chronic pains in her legs and just felt sick. She was running fevers, temperature, fatigue, and we had no idea. We had no idea. And then we started seeing a bunch of doctors, and through spinal taps.
Wow.
Dozens of doctors' visits, and ultimately diagnosed with Lyme disease.
When you and your family found out the diagnosis, just how did it hit you in the household?
Well, it didn't hit us so hard only because we weren't aware of what Lyme disease was. We didn't know anybody that had Lyme disease. And the internet is probably the worst thing out there, because you go on the internet and you start Googling Lyme disease or issues that are wrong that have to do with Lyme disease.
And it scares you.
It's very scary. People are dying from Lyme disease, and suddenly you're thinking, oh my God, oh my gosh, what's going on? So it didn't set in until probably about 5 years ago. It took a good 8 to 10 years to really settle in.
You're 39 now?
I'm 39 years old.
39 now. You're both 39.
Yes.
You have 2 children.
Correct.
And how did it impact you going from provider and head of the household and father and dad, you know, when you're trying to help your wife get well?
Yeah, it was tough, and it's been a tough road. She had a great career as a pharmaceutical rep with Eli Lilly, and I had the greatest job in the world working for Donald Trump at the Trump Organization up at Trump National Golf Club in Briarcliff. And to make a long story really short, I just couldn't put in the hours that were necessary to maintain taking care of my wife and my kids as they started getting older. They just turned 7 and 8 years old. She's at home getting home treatments with a nurse, IVIGs. And I had to seek out other opportunities and options, which I did, but
you had to leave your career.
I had to leave the Joe Torre Foundation again for a bunch of different circumstances, and of coming into the city and not being with my wife Monday through Friday. And probably the worst part about it is just the awareness that's not out there, that people don't know how bad Lyme disease is, how devastating it is to families. I wish some politicians would take it more serious. I don't want to get into the political road of things.
Oh,
I wish the CDC would take it more seriously. There's hundreds of thousands of patients, and it's outgrowing breast cancer. It's outgrowing colon cancer. It's outgrowing a diagnosis for HIV. This disease is getting worse and worse, and it's just, I'm hoping something can be done about it.
Dr. Gallen, why is that? Why are the numbers increasing to the extent that Dan was just mentioning?
Well, I think there are 2 things that are happening. One is global warming, which we didn't really feel this winter.
Right.
But the effect of that is to increase the season when people are outdoors, ticks are less likely to be killed off if the winters are not as harsh. I'm hoping that the harsh winter we just had is going to work in our favor around here. In other parts of the country, it certainly isn't. And it's mostly land use that originated this. You know, the disease is spread by deer ticks. So people tend to associate deer with Lyme disease.
Right.
But deer are not really the most important reservoir for deer ticks for humans. It's small mammals. It's chipmunks and mice and squirrels.
Okay.
And so in a forest, for example, the risk of acquiring Lyme disease is much smaller than in your backyard because there are going to be more of the small mammals. There are no predators in Westchester or Rockland County or anymore. So that there's just an increase in the kinds of small animals that carry the tick, and they're closer to us. And then, of course, you know, your wife liked to garden. Gardens are a really important place for picking up Lyme disease.
Why is it so difficult to diagnose? We were just talking about that.
Well, the standard diagnosis is based upon a blood test. And the blood test looks at antibodies against the bacteria that cause Lyme disease. You can get falsely negative blood tests for several reasons. Number one, different labs don't agree on what's positive and what's negative. That is, they use different assays in different kits. And the agreement between labs is relatively low. The second thing is that people don't necessarily mount an immune response. They certainly may not mount it right away when they first get sick. And then there are a number of different factors that may alter the nature of the immune response. And then finally, there are different species of bacteria that produce a Lyme-like illness that may have the same long-term effects, but they're not the same as the bacteria for which the original tests were developed. Those have been getting some press lately. So they complicate the situation. Lyme is basically a clinical diagnosis. That is, somebody who has a summer flu in the New York metropolitan area.
Yes, sir.
Number one diagnosis is Lyme disease. I don't care what the blood tests say. You know, the flu is not around here in summer.
Right.
Lyme is.
Dan, tell us about the challenge.
Well, the
You
challenge,
created this.
it's exciting. I helped raise awareness for it. It started out in Florida somewhere, and there was a program put out there for awareness on ALS
Right.
by Mitt Romney's wife, Ann Romney, with the hashtag 50 million faces. Show your face. While there's a lot of similarities between Lyme disease and ALS with the neurological system and the nerves, I said, you know what, Jen, smile. She was getting her IVIG treatment, which I was talking to the doctor about earlier, which he says is one of the best treatments, so I'm actually grateful to hear that. I just tweeted it out there, and I get a reply from Lou Leone telling me his wife has Lyme disease. And Lou and I have been following each other on Twitter. I'm a big social media guy. Follow everybody here at Fox 5. You guys are absolutely you guys are awesome, and what you guys do for the awareness of Lyme is incredible. And Lou told me he's in. So I presented him with a challenge. It's called the Lyme Disease Challenge.
Okay.
LymeDiseaseChallenge.org is the website. And I challenged him to take a bite out of Lyme. He replied yes. And I said, you've got to be kidding me.
So that's why we have these.
That's why we have limes. And then Dari and Steve and Nick and all of them came on board.
All right.
So here we are.
We're going to put the information on our website.
Thank
but
you.
Of course, you don't have to tell me twice. I am always in
You're
support
awesome.
of a great cause.
Thank you.
Take a bite out of Lyme.
Is there a 1, 2, 3 thing here? Or?
Well, you're supposed to share a fact about Lyme, and you're also supposed to video it, which we're doing, which is outstanding. And you're supposed to challenge other people, which you can do via your Twitter account afterwards or right here on television. But I've been just challenging people.
I will
out of
do
nowhere.
that. I'm going to challenge, and before we go and before I do this, the fact that I want you to share with us is just how's your wife doing right now?
I appreciate that. She's doing very well. She's doing very well. you know, she goes out to the soccer games and lacrosse games. Behind the scenes, though, in our home, which I've never shared before over the past 14 years, all in, is tough at times. Is very tough, but she's doing very well. She's a fighter, as are all those Lymies out there. I've become friends with so many Lymies out there on the Twitter network by the hundreds, and this is for all of them that are suffering from Lyme disease.
This is for them. All right, and you have our prayers as well.
Thank you.
Oh, that's a good lime.
This is. Now, you know, I gave up drinking for Lent, and I've been just sticking with it because it was starting to impact my waist. But some tequila would really work in my whole life.
Yeah. Thank you.
Heaven,
Thank you.
you have our prayers.
Thank you.
So nice to meet you.
Nice to meet
All right,
you.
we're going to put the information up
Thanks
on our
so much.
website.